Today's episode is brought to you by Positively Productive Systems, whose mission is to be the antidote to your stress and to provide compassionate productivity resources and coaching that help you heal and achieve. Be sure to check out both free and paid resources at positivelyproductive.com/resources.
Serial entrepreneurs, despite the fact that the word entrepreneur is in there, they may or may not own their own first full-fledged business just yet. So maybe they do, maybe they don't. Maybe they have a side hustle. Maybe they are a person who has always had that corporate gig, but these side hustles just keep popping up for them. They always have their hands in a few things. More so than that, it is the entrepreneur that's like, I'm doing this one thing, but really I look at my business as a stool and there needs to be a couple other legs on this stool. It's technically only 3 to a stool, but they might have 4. So, and then they might think about the back of their stool as well, if it swivels. So a serial is certainly somebody that likely has a couple different ways to make dollars, and they have those skills and those assets. They definitely have a ton of ideas, but what they do more than anything is they take action, big, massive action.
You're listening to the Positively Living podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Zawrotny, founder of Positively Productive Systems and a coach certified in time and stress management, helping clients make space for what matters most in their lives. Join me each episode and we'll talk about decluttering, stress management, habits, personalized productivity, gratitude, and so much more. I understand the overwhelm of life because I'm a wife, mom to kids and cats, and a former caregiver. I'm here to help you choose what's right for you so you can do less, live more, and breathe easier. Sound good? Let's get to it. Hello and welcome to the Positively Living podcast. I'm your host, Lisa, and I'm a multi-passionate entrepreneur. I love being one and coaching them. But I will admit it can be a double-edged sword. You have all the ideas and all the drive to do them, but you can feel like there isn't enough time in the day to do what you want to do. When I coach my multi-passionate clients who deal with this very challenge, we address things like energy management instead of time management, prioritizing, and intentional selection of tasks. We also work on decluttering. Not just the physical stuff, but letting go of things that don't belong and things that block your progress. Today, we use that as a jumping off point to dig into a solution that comes built into multi-passionate entrepreneurs. My guest, Nicole Schmied, someone whom I think of as a serial entrepreneur queen, joins me on the podcast to discuss the biggest superpower you may not realize you had. Nicole Schmied is the CEO and founder of Smart Cookie Media and the creator of the podcast, The Serial Entrepreneur Show. Through workshops, video tutorials, and done-for-you services, her 100% all-entrepreneur team creates marketing strategies and events to help experts stand out online. Nicole lives outside of Chicago in Northwest Indiana with her husband Kyle and their 2 boys, Luke and Will. She lives the serial entrepreneur life, so when she speaks to the superpower, she speaks from the heart and from personal experience. Nicole grew up with entrepreneurs, as did I, and I got to share about that on her podcast, and has been able to see a thread of resilience and brilliance in entrepreneurs that isn't obvious to them. In our conversation today, we not only cover who serial entrepreneurs are, aka multi-passionate creative entrepreneurs, aka you, we address what the superpower is. Spoiler alert, it's taking massive action. Nicole describes what that looks like and uncovers another side to it you probably didn't realize you were doing. We also discuss what it takes to hone this power and what you need to take the best, most effective action. And we get some incredible marketing bonus tips from Nicole that will have you scribbling notes frantically. Toward the end of our conversation, she shares something so heartfelt about how we're misunderstood as serial entrepreneurs and what we need to do to overcome that, as well as how she and I are both here to support you in that effort. One of the tips she gives is to find a way to organize all these ideas that come to you naturally. That's where I come in. You'll want to check out episodes 86 on 3 simple systems and 120 on organizing notes and ideas. And I also encourage you to book a discovery call with me so we can take a quick look at your system. That includes if your system is that you have no system. That's an option on my booking form. Head to positivelyproductive.com/call and pick a time that works for you. I look forward to chatting with you. And now, let's get to chatting with Nicole. Welcome to the Positively Living Podcast, Nicole Schmied. Would you tell us a bit about yourself, who you are, who you help, and what makes you light up?
Yeah, I'm Nicole Schmied. I'm the founder of Smart Cookie Media and a newer podcast called The Serial Entrepreneur Show. I am a mom and a wife. I have 2 little boys. They certainly help me light up, but I help entrepreneurs. And let me tell you, entrepreneurs are my first love. The boys are no comparison. They don't compete at all with them. They will always take precedence. But those entrepreneurs, I fell in love with them when I was probably 8 or 9 years old.
Oh, I love that. Entrepreneurs as first love. Was that something that you were just drawn to immediately?
I was, yeah, since a wee little small fry, as I say. Yeah. So my parents, they owned their own business. I grew up as an only child, which meant I was everywhere and anywhere with them. And I was also in a really small private school. And that is not code for opulence or money. No, that was code for that school also needed money. And so there was lots of fundraisers. And man, there was this one 1984-5 kit where it was cardboard and you'd open up the kit and you'd sell to that neighbor next door. And I'd show her wrapping paper and candies and whatever else was in that box of goodies that I could just show and show. And I loved it. And I was so shy until that box was in front of me. And I think it just is that confidence I saw from my parents growing up. And later they divorced and they still owned their own things separately. And I found myself as being mini marketer right away.
And so with that, if you started early, then you had lots of chances, I guess, to have many iterations, right, of businesses and to be an entrepreneur?
Oh my goodness. Yes. I had a first lemonade stand, but of course, then I had to run inside and was like, we have shaved ice, I think, on this refrigerator. We rented a little apartment. I was with just me and my dad growing up at age 8 when they divorced. It was just me and him. And I was like, I think there's shaved ice on that thing, Dad. Let me go check. And my lemonade stand had little shaved ice. Later, I'd go pick flowers, really pretty ones. I probably wasn't allowed to. I picked flowers and tried to sell those to neighbors that they were probably their own flowers. And my first business card said candy galore. My dad enabled me with, oh yeah, you want a candy store? Okay. We didn't really have a candy store, but by golly, I had business cards and we pretended, and there were some candy bars around. But yeah, so those iterations started early, and then college and grad school came along. There were some more along the way.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And so your story really highlights what you and I know about multi-passionate entrepreneurs, about serial entrepreneurs, as you call them, that the ideas are flowing, right? Like crazy. They
Absolutely.
never stop. And I laugh at that because I literally said like a week ago to someone, if you told me that I needed to have a cutoff point for this business, it would make me so sad. But, hypothetically, and then ask me, okay, what's next? I'd be like, I got a list a mile long. So
absolutely. Yes. Oh yeah. No, there's always an exit plan, because right behind that is, well, and then because I have this other big idea, right? There's always, that's when you're talking to an entrepreneur.
Exactly. The exit plan is like the entrance plan, because you're like, it's okay. Yes. I got backup. So all that being said, so we do know that the ideas are definitely flowing. Let's back up a little bit and say what it really means to be a serial entrepreneur, or what your experience has been being one, coaching them. Mm-hmm. Who are they? Who are serial entrepreneurs?
Yeah. So serial entrepreneurs, despite the fact that the word entrepreneur is in there, they may or may not own their own first full-fledged business just yet. What I've found is sometimes we have old voices in our head. We can talk about that in a little bit. So maybe they do, maybe they don't. Maybe they have a side hustle. Maybe they are a person who has always had that corporate gig, depending on if they're head of household, things like that. But these side hustles just keep popping up for them. They always have their hands in a few things. More so than that, it is the entrepreneur that's like, I'm doing this one thing, but really I look at my business as a stool, and there needs to be a couple other legs on the stool. Technically only 3 to a stool, but they might have 4. So, and then they might think about the back of their stool as well, if it swivels. So really somebody that has their hands in a few different things. And when they're serials, now, of course, like any entrepreneur, they can be successful at it, or, trying to figure it out. Somebody called me, We were on a call yesterday and she said, man, I was lost for a while. And let me
Mhm.
tell you, her business is nothing around the word lost at all, but you can feel that way. So a serial is certainly somebody that likely has a couple different ways to make dollars, and they have those skills and those assets. They definitely have a ton of ideas, but what they do more than anything is they take action, big, massive action.
There you go. And that is the special thing we wanted to talk about today. And I love that you called it a superpower. And I really, truly think it is. So when you're a serial entrepreneur and you have this inclination, and I like how you described it as, maybe it's not a full-fledged business yet, or maybe it's pieces, parts, or maybe it's components of a business. I was immediately thinking about people who get involved in MLMs. And guess what? I was part of that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that pathway where you keep searching, right? So you have that curiosity, that interest, the ideas, you're trying out things.
Yes.
So what would you say are the challenges that we serial entrepreneurs tend to face most?
Yeah. So we face all the normal ones, right? Like all, financial concerns, risk, worry. But I believe it is external and the internal. So that external could be, yeah, the risk. You have family, you shouldn't do that. I don't really know that I've heard that story enough that somebody has said to me, oh, everybody I know told me don't do this. It's really the internal. We think it's the external a lot of times, but it's really the internal challenge of, oh, someone's going to say I can't do this because I'm going to risk family and I'm going to risk health and happiness. I have a story always going in my head that at a certain level, a certain success point, I don't know if I can have a successful marriage. It's a story that sometimes I can remember the last time I said it out loud to my husband. I said, hey, there's a story running in my head right now. I may have told you before. I said, I just need to check in really quick. Talking about goals recently. I just want to make sure that when we hit these goals, like you're still good, I'm still good. He looks at me like, you're crazy and I love you. Right. Like, but it's that internal struggle, I think, that is more than anything, because we have heard an old mentor, we've heard an old guru, worse, somebody that has the curse of knowledge and forgets the early days, and we start to perpetuate those stories and we just keep them as our own, and they're not even necessarily real.
Gosh, this is so true. And I immediately was thinking the word stories, and we've talked about that on the podcast, and we will again many, many times, in that I think that's such an important word, because the idea of a story is you need to ask, is it true? And I actually had something similar where I had a conversation with my husband because somehow I'd gotten the impression, right, from watching other successful entrepreneurs and other successful women entrepreneurs specifically, who seem to find success and then lose their husbands.
Right. I was a child of divorce, right? Whether success was there or not, in spite of it, maybe. But so in my mind as well, same
Oh my
thing.
gosh. And so I did have the conversation. So kudos to you. And that's great advice. Take that to the bank, to have the conversation, because I had the conversation with my husband and he laughed at me and he's like,
Yes.
you want me to be a house husband? I am good with that. Do not worry. Do not worry.
Yes,
So
exactly.
yeah, we have to watch these stories. And actually in an upcoming episode, I'm going to be talking about permission to follow your own path. And I think that ties in so beautifully. So now there's the stories and those challenges, but I think we as entrepreneurs, and especially serial entrepreneurs, still feel that push and still kind of get around it somehow. But let's talk about the superpower that we have and how we can more fully engage it. Because I think it just happens. But, what is it and how we have it? I know that the one superpower I love to talk about, we brought it up immediately, was the ideas. Like
Yep.
I want to snap,
Yes,
like
yes.
it just, like they come up. But what's the other big one?
Yes. So taking massive action is huge for the serial entrepreneur. I think that you'd even find that serial entrepreneur running a gala, right? You might find them different ways because they do have those ideas, but they take the action. They're not just sitting on the bench and being like, well, maybe. Those sitting on the bench, they forget about their idea, I'm afraid. But taking massive action makes it real. And you quickly find out what works or doesn't work. I remember my kid sisters and my brother, when they were making decisions about college, well, I don't really know what I want to study, Nicole. Well, guess what? No 18-year-old does. I mean, yes, there are some that just know they're going to be a doctor, right? But they don't really know yet, right? They haven't stepped into that world just yet. And I said, I compare it, you're hungry, you're going to go out to eat with friends. You're likely going to meet up and get in a car. Maybe you're going to sit around somebody's basement and talk about it a little while. But if you know there's nothing in the house, you're going to have to leave and you're going to have to drive down the street. And if you're in the Midwest, you're going to drive past White Castle and say, no, thank you, White Castle. You're not all college kids, but I said, but you have to make the choices. And so you're going to take the communication class. You're going to take the algebra again and be like, I did that. That's fine. I don't want to do it again. You're going to get to criminal justice or marketing and be like, oh, okay, yeah, I could do that. And so I think the same is true when you're taking action. You realize what action you took did or didn't result in what you thought, whether it was a fear that came true or whether it was success or whether, hey, that flopped, but you know, it did work. This worked. And I think that is what the serials do really, really well, is they take the action, they keep moving.
I think that's another part of it. I feel like it's a two-parter, and you just said it. It's not only taking the action, but to keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's the repeat, to keep taking action. Okay, you took the action. Now we're talking about an element of resilience, but we're also talking about, as you said, it being an inside job of being careful with the stories we tell ourselves about what we just figured out. What did the data tell us? You know,
Right,
the data did not tell me that I am trash. It's all trash and I'm giving up, you know. The data told me that didn't work, right?
You're right. You know, maybe what we're really also good at is compartmentalizing. That's the business. This is me. That's the business. This is me.
Ooh, I kind of like that, actually. So even if the business is you, and even if you do something and it didn't work, I think that it's also about how we frame it, because it's not always like, well, I failed or I didn't do it right. Sometimes it's like, that didn't work for me. And that's what I get into with the productivity coaching, is that saying, can we stop with the shame and the guilt about you, quote, failing that habit or having that unfinished planner, or maybe multiple ones in your drawer? Anyone? You know, that's okay. It's because those things didn't work for you.
I'm sorry, our planner's supposed to be finished. Okay.
What?
I digress.
No, stop. So yeah, it's understanding what works for you.
Right.
And what I really liked in the taking action part that you described, and I feel like I want to highlight this one, this auditory highlight where I take the highlighter in our conversation. I'm like, did you hear what Nicole said? Quickly find out what works and doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Boom. Taking action is the quickest way to figure it out. Yeah,
the quickest and the only, right? We can talk about it all day long. We can pontificate, we can get our whiteboards out and our charts out, and we can journal, which we love to journal, but nothing changes it like taking action. I can talk about it with my team. I can talk about it with my mom. Hey, what do you think? And until I talk to, in my case, my market or a client, the market really, right? The market always tells. And so when you take action towards the market, they're going to tell you real quick.
I love it. So how do we use this? How do we engage this superpower? And we've probably done it, right? Okay. We've taken the action. We've tried the things. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But how do we get better and maybe like hone the superpower, if you will?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think there's a couple of things, and you probably have really, really good tools for these. So I will give you what's worked for me or what I think has been working for me. And you'll say, oh, that's the art of da da da. And research says. I think a few things that work really well for any of the serials that we've met is making sure that they have chosen a mark, a goal, a benchmark, a milestone, right? That, you know, when I hit $3,000 a month, that's when I know this is a success for this, right? And then I can build on it, or then I can use ads, or then I can, whatever that is. I think back when you mentioned about MLMs, I think if anybody listening that someone else has ever said, hey, you'd be really good at this MLM, you likely are an entrepreneur, maybe a serial, certainly a salesperson. You know, I said earlier that it is about being able to make $1. And I think that if you can add that as a benchmark, I think it's different if somebody says like, well, I'm going to try this for 6 months. Okay, trying something for 6 months, I'm air quoting trying, right, is very different than say, I'm going to work to make $3,000 a month at this before I decide that this venture isn't for me, that this new, I've listened to so many people in like the start of their businesses, and it really, you know, it's either they want to replace some income or part of their income or all of their income, or they had no other choice, back was against the wall. And it's when they, you know, when you don't have that net. So I think when a serial has one product line, even like, let's say they're just one business and they have 7 product lines, before they've gone to product 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that first one is sustaining them. And so they're setting that goal, that benchmark.
I like this. And so really, there are 2 things that kind of jumped out to me, and you can tell me if I have this accurately, is that you're first answering the question, what does success look like when you're stepping forward? And the other part of this is that you're clearly defining what the limits are to this experiment or what the components are to this experiment. And that clarity is key because, well, it's not just the clarity of like, what does success look like, but then the clarity of, I'm going to try it for this amount of time. I find that to be so encouraging when you're trying to move forward on something, when you're trying something new, anything that might feel like an effort that you can say, well, okay, it's going to be 30 days or 6 weeks. It's going to be this. I can do it for that long. I could try
Right.
this for that
Yes.
long. That's big because it's encouraging.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, it's so funny how that it permeates so many things I do. And I bet the same for you too, Lisa. As you just shared back some of my own words, I remember saying exactly that. Like, you can do this for so long. A member of my team has been here for a while with me, part-time capacities, and we got to help a candidate for Congress win his seat, I might add. But during that time, I remember not a formal coaching appointment by any means, but encouraging family members of his and just saying, you can do anything for 4 or 5 weeks. Like, you can do this. You can do this. Because it was going to be maddening. Let me be breakneck speed, crazy madhouse. And that was before COVID, right? Like, that was before. You can do anything for 5 weeks. And that was like the encouragement, like, beat the drum and encourage them. And then before you know it, the world shut down. You can do anything for, well, an indefinite amount of time. And, well, no one's going to really be around you. But I'm glad we consulted and encouraged you before that. So those skill sets, they go with us so many different ways that when we can just apply that. I do it when I coach somebody when they're working with leads, marketing leads. I always tell them 3 times, 3 ways. And they are like, wait, you want me to text and phone and email? Yeah, 3 times, 3 ways. Like, those 3 ways, I want you to do it 3 times. Okay, well, why only those 9 times? I'm like, well, I'm glad that you know that I said 9 times, because some people stop at 3. But I said, it's important that you know when to stop. Now, the sales girl in me wants you to go to like 11 or 12, but I know everybody's capacity will hang out somewhere around 9. And most people are going to pick up some type of effort from you after 6, 5 or 6. They're going to be like, who is this person that is just going to keep coming for me and calling me and texting me? And so I encourage everybody, those 3 times, 3 ways, even internal communication with my team. I'm not that great at it. I'm better at sales when it comes to the follow-up. But even internally, I'm like, okay, let's make sure that everybody has a handle on what everybody needs to know 3 times, 3 ways, because when I can set that goal just for even communication, external or internal, it gets clearer. Cool. It's effective. Awesome. But then I give you an out. You don't have to keep going. Give yourself permission. Give yourself some grace. It didn't work. They weren't ready to buy. They weren't ready to hear that. They weren't ready. And it works. And so this conversation of like setting these benchmarks, I think for a long time, we've all talked about them as big goals, but I really think it's what a serial figures out how to do right away. What is the threshold? How quickly can I get there? And determine if this is success or not.
Yeah. And when we're talking about thresholds, I love that you're talking about specific benchmarks, specific approaches. By the way, I mean, let's highlight this 3 times, 3 ways. I've literally written that down. I'm like, hello. So that was gold. Thank you very much.
I'll share a video.
Right. Love it. Okay. We'll put that in the show notes. So there's that aspect. And then there's also the threshold idea of what you think you can handle based on your energy, based on what's going on right now. Are you dealing with a pandemic? Do you have kids going back to school? Do you have like another launch that you're doing? Like, depending upon all these things, this will be where you choose. And you're like, okay, if you said 6 weeks, I think I might lose my mind, but 4 weeks I can do,
Yes.
So you figure out those limits based on all those factors.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Because it is not just the quantifiable, but it is, can you run after it? Because I also have clients who say, well, I don't want to do the texting thing. It seems aggressive, she said to me. Well, you know what's aggressive is spending $42 for a lead and you just wanting to nurture them with emails. That's aggressive to your wallet.
Which aggressive do you want, right?
Yes. And so I've said, like, if you feel it's aggressive, they asked you to put them on your to-do list. They filled out your form. They said, hey, phone and email me. They gave both. It wasn't accident. They didn't stumble on you. And I said, so what's aggressive is you just being like, I'm just going to ignore that and pay $42. I'm like, we can do cheaper ads for that. You can choose anything else, because if you don't want to do it, because she's like, no, I'll do it. And I remember her taking off her coat. She's like, no, I'm going to do it. I'm like, well, okay, coat's going off. I'm just telling you, do it for a set amount of time. I told her 20 to 50 times, or do it your way for 20 to 50 times. My job in this case as a marketer was to tell you what's working, and it's working. And I said, but it's not going to work with an attitude of, yeah, okay, we'll see. That's not going to work. So yeah, you have to know your own thresholds too.
Yep. Okay. So we have this, what does success look like? What are our goals? And then what are the limits to this? I'm calling it an experiment, if you will, right? You're going to step forward. Because if you think about it as an experiment, if you think about it like a scientist, right, then you're collecting data that keeps the curiosity in and the judgment out.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, big.
So we have those. All right. So what's next after that? I'm kind of intrigued by the market side of this and maybe some tips that we can get to monitor and figure out, is this working or isn't it?
Oh, yes. So there's this crazy thing that a lot of entrepreneurs, I don't care what industry you're in, I feel like, and I do mean, I'm just going to say I feel like it. I need to probably do some data research on it. I feel like the thing that we don't do enough of is offer. Solopreneurs or those with small teams, they are right now saying, well, because I'm at capacity. Because I can't keep making an offer. You got to still make the offer to understand your market, even if you have to tell them I'm booked out 6 weeks. But to beat that drum regularly with the market, you can do that a few different ways that you don't have to fill up the calendar, but you can make sure that you're getting some type of feedback, right? The eardrum is just feedback from what's happening outside, right? It's not exactly it's just hitting a little bit of vibrations. So you can test it with just words. I treat Facebook, particularly Facebook ads. So I treat that like it's my little chemistry lab. Like I'm just like a little Facebook chemist, because I know there are how many people sitting on Facebook. And I have called out in rooms that I've spoken to, there was like a young person and there's, different ages. I've called out the young person in the room. I said, I bet you're there and you're on a pseudonym, because everyone starts saying, well, the kids aren't on Facebook anymore. And I turned to her and I said, I bet you're there, but you're on a pseudonym, right? I said, because my kid's sister, I'm pretty sure she was listed as Danny DeVito for a while. And she, like, at the end, she came up, she's like, you called me out right in front of my aunt. And I was like, I know, but you're there. You're going to make sure you're checking up on everybody. You're there, right? And she's like, yeah, you're right. I am there. And so I know that a whole lot of people are there, that if I can just send out some messages, hey, I'm thinking about this, or we're offering this, or not yet, you're going to get some type of feedback loop that you can use anywhere else. And I think that's a really important way to test market.
Okay. And so that starts to answer the question. I want to dig into that just a little bit more to make sure we're very clear about it. This idea of making the offer, what does that look like? Because it sounds to me like you're saying test the market, whether or not you can immediately provide the thing that you're offering.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So it doesn't have to be a Billy Mays infomercial offer, right? So I think sometimes people are like, I don't want to be, I don't want to be that. No, but you can just say, hey, I'm considering this. I'm thinking about doing this. It can even just be smaller to past clients. And hey, I'm thinking about an extra product line, or I might do this other business. It happened with myself, right? So we are Smart Cookie Media, and we have a roadmap that we take our customers on, that they can pick and choose their VIP days. But at some point, what kept showing up, I do a lot of video and support them that way, but what kept showing up was they still needed this other thing, and it was community. And at the time that I kept thinking about it, it was COVID. I had just had a brand new baby. There was no childcare. There were all those things. And I just kept thinking about how do I manage my time? How do I clockwork my time, actually? And as I thought about that, I thought, I can't keep having these conversations, this one example, and them only live between me and that one client, that one customer, that one entrepreneur friend, when the rest of my entrepreneur association needs the community. And that's where our podcast was born from, to support entrepreneurs, to be a community that is fast enough, though, for us, right? How precious is our time to tune in right now? Like, I'm so thankful for every single little ear right now, whether they're listening right away when it comes out or later, because you don't got time. You might just like have gone for a walk for a little bit, but you don't really have time to add one more thing. And I understand, I appreciate it, but you do have time for community, and we need it, because we need to know we're not alone. We're all figuring it out. Yeah. So that's an example of how we had to figure out, well, what if we put this out there? Do they want it? Are they going to listen? And really leaned into that. And in the opening of ours, I make fun of it. If you're an entrepreneur who likes to fast forward intros like this one, this is the podcast for you, because that is so many of ours. So we were trying to find ways to be like, hey, if we started something like this, would this be helpful to you? Oh yeah, while I was editing, I'll listen to it. Or, oh yeah, and people are showing up and you're seeing that. But it is in those early stages to be able to offer to your market, hey, I'm thinking about this. Did I have time to add something else to my list? No, I had to figure it out. But that was a way for us to consider another avenue.
Okay, so I want to be clear too, the way that you're describing this, and then when you were saying make the offer, and this is why I wanted to make the distinction, this sounds a lot like, and maybe it's just all one and the same. It's like, use whatever words you want. But this sounds to me like the magical thing that I know I had to grow into, and I still know that I need to keep growing into, which is called market research.
Yes, 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 and yes.
She's talking about market research. Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about market research, but I am saying offer it though. So like even if you have an
Yes.
existing business, making sure that you're putting out some type of offer is going to tell you that your current offer is still great. That's still something that people want. So always market research, always be listening.
I love that. Always be listening. That's even better than always be closing.
Yeah, I always say that marketing is, I love it. As the eldest of 5 kids, I always had to be right, right? Like, and I just had to be right because I was a little perfectionist as at age 4. But in marketing, I don't have to be right. I only have to be listening. That's it.
Excuse me. I need to grab another mic to hand to you so that you may drop it. And just touching upon that last little thing there, which you've kind of worked your way around, and I just want to bring out and highlight is that perfectionism thing. And what you're talking about is listening, making the offer, asking, all of that. Again, just like we talked about with the data and the experiments, it doesn't have to be perfect. And all I keep thinking about with what you're describing is one of my favorite things in the agile world is the MVP, the minimum viable product,
Yes,
right?
yes,
You're not trying to do all the things. You're just taking a step.
yes,
And
absolutely.
that's how we keep taking the best action, right? And we keep from that perfectionism holding us up. Okay. I'm loving this. Okay. This feels like a really good place to wrap up. Any other thoughts to encourage us to take this action?
Yeah, I think that you've got to have a way to organize all of these ideas because a lot of our serials hear it as, well, I got to stay focused. So I'm at a place, and I've talked to others, right, that have figured out how to quote focus or get past that old voice that constantly says, oh, that's shiny object syndrome. Oh, that's just another squirrel, or you're just chasing another thing. You may say it to yourself, but some people may think of you as scattered or all over the place. And you need to, whether it's thicker skin or just trying it out more or realizing that you're really good at this, you're really good at running after a few things, but you need to make sure that you're not playing this loop and missing out on your next big idea because it may take you 10. It may take you a good solid 8. Like, we hear the phrase try again, right? If once you first you don't succeed, try again. But do we really try again? Serials do, or the entrepreneur that has tried again a few times, right? And only then can we quiet the minds that say, oh, that's just shiny objects. Oh, she doesn't know. Like, oh, she's just trying to figure it out. She's just lost. No, she's working on it. But make sure that you have a plan to be organized, set your thresholds, yes, all of those things, but really work really hard to identify. You're probably brilliant. Like I'm not going to call you a genius. I don't know everyone's IQ level, but I'm saying you probably have some elements of some really great brilliance, and you have to iterate. And that's the difference is people see it as, oh, you're scattered. Oh, you're all over the place. Oh, not committed. And it's not that. It's I'm not committed to something that's meh. That's what I'm not committed to. And so if it's not there yet, then that's what it could look like scattered. So own that. Be okay with that you're on the way to that. Be okay with that. And I don't think there's enough of that. I think it's, oh, ADHD. Oh, you got to manage it. Oh, I bet I don't know all the medical things, but I do know that when you can lean in and realize you're made different than the rest of the world, it's pretty special.
Oh, I love so much about what you just said, not solely because this is my purpose as a productivity coach for multi-passionates. I believe in it too, because it's so easy for the outside world to say, declutter, like I love to say, but then they're like, but declutter because it's bright, shiny objects that are distracting you. And that's another squirrel. And I'm like, but that doesn't mean that squirrel isn't a good business opportunity, so it's trusting yourself. So I would agree. You want to organize, you want to simplify, but it's not always in the way of just get rid of the ideas. And what you said about you're brilliant and you have to iterate, right? You need to step into it. That pulls us right back into taking action. So that is so encouraging. Okay, it is time to wrap up. And before we go into the rapid wrap up, other than the Serial Entrepreneur Show, you definitely need to listen. And I was lucky enough to be on it. So I am one of the guests there. So definitely we'll put that in the show notes. But other than that, where else can we find you, Nicole?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook, Smart Cookie Entrepreneur. We take care of all entrepreneurs there on that page. But then there is a group called the Entrepreneurs Toolkit. because that smart cookie page, we got a whole lot of perfectionists and a whole lot of decision makers of business, not just our entrepreneurs. But that group, we give away free resources and tools. Usually every week I'm in there giving some type of tip and tool. This week's was actually really, really fun. And so, yeah, we're always giving something there. You can also find me on Instagram and see everything business and mom life and how I attempt to do both at Nicole_Schmied.
Okay, we'll make sure to have those links in the show notes. Now, are you ready for the rapid wrap up?
I think so.
You are. I know it. So you're just filling in the blanks for me. A song that lifts my spirits, makes me dance.
Whitney Houston's I Want to Dance with Somebody.
There you go. That's a good one. All right. How about a quote or a mantra that inspires me that I love to share?
Yeah, one should not tie a ship to a single anchor, nor life to a single hope.
I love that. Yeah, that's perfect for multi-passionates. It's so perfect.
Right? Isn't it so good? I remember writing it out as a kid at my friend's house. I would always design her mom a little quote and leave it on her fridge whenever I stayed the night.
There you go. All right. And last of the rapid wrap up is a resource. And that can be a book or an app, anything that makes your life better.
Everything that Mike Michalowicz puts out makes my life better. That's for sure. Because we spoke about market research, I just want to give you one other one because it sits on my desk at all times. And that is Donald Miller, Building a Story Brand. And I just think that has opened the door for everybody to understand marketing in such an easy way.
I will add that to our reading list, and that will actually go on the favorites page on Positively Productive /favorites. And you'll have a link right to that book, Building a Story Brand. That's excellent. Okay. And then last, but definitely not least, what are you grateful for today, Nicole?
Oh my goodness. So many things, truly, Lisa. This conversation, I cannot tell you enough how special it is to be able to get out in the world some of the things that roll around in my head that I want to support people on. It's so, so special. But none of it happens without good health of my kiddos, my family, and extended family, just all of that. But those two things I'm always grateful for. Good conversation and that good health.
As am I. And one extra thing today, most especially, I'm grateful for you. And thank you, Nicole, for shining your light so brilliantly in this world and for sharing it with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you for joining me today. Your time is precious and limited, and I'm honored you chose to spend it with me. If you have feedback, questions, or want to schedule a chat, head to positivelyproductive.com/connect. And if you are looking for any of the resources referenced on the podcast, from books to products to training and more, go to positivelyproductive.com/resources.